Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and Alliance Battle Extreme recently got an upgraded rewards scheme, and while the reward scheme is still not sufficient and not equivalent to the amount of effort and investment that you have to make, it is a little bit more than we've gotten used to. And it is enough to encourage a lot of players to aim just a little bit higher. Unfortunately, aiming for the absolute highest point, which at this point is 7 million every day, is just out of the question for most players who aren't already heavily invested in ABX, because it just costs tons of money, tons of gambling, tons of CTPs, and the reward, as I said, is minuscule. But nevertheless, I went ahead and updated the ABX guide, and I wanted to talk to you guys about it today because on top of the stuff in the beginning here that talks about like the highest player, highest characters, highest builds, stuff like that, if you scroll over to the right, you'll see that this is where it's a little bit more interesting for all players. And this is what I think you should be aiming for every single day that you can if you have an intermediate account. So I think this is a really great video to discuss here because we have a nice intersection of new intermediate players and veteran/whale players. So you can see here, these were the regular rewards that everyone was getting for the past 3 years, and this was it. Believe it or not, for like 3 years, players were playing ABX and pumping thousands of dollars into it to get this garbage. And they were basically just doing the rest of it for, the cohesion of playing as a team and the small personal and team glory of Alliance tournament. So yeah. Net Marble, Future Fight, and rewards. We've talked about it many times. Anyways, with the last update, before the Black Widow one, actually, it wasn't the Black Widow one, it was the one before that, which would have been House of X. They added these rewards to Alliance Battle Extreme. They added the booster. They added the booster being, I'll show you guys what the booster is in case you're wondering. It's not an ISO, but it's what you use to awaken ISOs. It's these right here. So you see there at 100k, you get a 5-star version. The 5-star versions are not that good, but they're better than nothing. At 300k, you get a 6-star. That's actually a good reward, I would say. And then from there, the rewards kind of suck, but you do get a 4 to 6-star card chest. In my opinion, this should just be straight up a 6-star card chest. You get 10 level 1 Uni XP chips. This should be level 3. You get a 5 to 6-star obelisk chest. This should be a 6-star obelisk chest. You get 10 level 2. This should be 10 level 4 or level 5. Then you get 500,000 gold for 5 million, which is absurd. This should be 1 million gold at least. It should be at least double. And then for 7 million gold, you get a 5 to 6-star Uru chest. That's trash. You should get a guaranteed 6-star Uru that can possibly open an Odin's Blessing as well. So it should be a random Odin's Blessing chest, because as you'll notice from the competitive scores, and these are very competitive scores, you can only hit majority of players, we're talking like 99.9% of players, can only hit 7 million on the Luna Snow days. So that's 3 days out of 2 weeks. Yeah. I really think that the rewards are trash for those, but what's really good is over here, and that's why you want to aim for at least 600k, because getting that 4 to 6-star card chest every single day is going to make a difference, right? Even if you're only opening 1 6-star card every 2 weeks, the rest are 4 and 5 stars. That's an extra couple of mythic cards. That could possibly even be an extra mythic card per week. So I think it's definitely worthwhile to aim for at least 600k. So I did try my best to come up with the cheapest 100k, 300k, and 600k teams. Now, the cheapest 100k teams are almost the same that they've been for a long time. The only changes I've made were I swapped Molten Man with Taskmaster. The reason why is because you get Taskmaster for free now as a 6-star from the Black Widow legendary battle. So that means that he's even easier to obtain. You don't need to use Shadowland selectors. You don't need to use a 6-star selector to get him. And then I swapped, not Caecilius, I swapped Ulysses Claw for Hydro Man. I'm not sure why I'd put Ulysses Claw. I know his tier 2 passive is good, but Hydro Man is so much easier to play than Ulysses Claw. So I decided to do that, and I think Hydro Man has a much higher ceiling at tier 2 than Ulysses Claw does have, especially now with the roar changes lowering a lot of players' scores. So yeah, this is what it looks like for 100k and 300k. Keep in mind that if it's a bold on the name, that means you don't need the character's uniform. So for Shuri and Taskmaster to hit 100k, and Minerva, you do not need their uniforms. Everyone else, you should assume that they have their most recent uniforms. I didn't specify the uniforms for these characters, but obviously we're talking either black or white uniform for Black Widow from the newest movie. For Cyclops, I've referenced P5 because it's just very easy to say Phoenix 5, but otherwise, you're assuming that it's the what is it, Star Knight uniform for Sharon Rogers, the newest one for Mysterio, so on and so forth. And then also for the highest builds here, I bolded Nick Fury and Red Hulk. In Red Hulk's case, you have to take off his uniform. So I believe his uniform now costs gold instead of crystals. But for those of you that weren't using Red Hulk before, and I actually still get this question on stream, why are you using Red Hulk lead with Namor? Shouldn't you use someone else? No, absolutely not. Red Hulk is by far the best option for the villain version of Namor because he has all fire skills. But yeah, as a no uniform, he's a villain. But when you equip his Marvel Now uniform, he turns into a hero. So you actually do need to unequip this one to have him function with Namor for the Combat Villain Day. And then Nick Fury's leadership, and just basically the buff that he gives the team is not really, like, you're going to get almost identical scores whether you have his uniform or not. There's so many other things you can do for the build to improve the score that getting the uniform is sort of like the last thing. You know, you'd rather spend diamonds spend crystals trying to get Odin's Blessings or trying to get CTPs of Rage before you'd actually spend it on the uniform because you're not going to see much of a score increase there. But yeah, and then the main DPS builds are pretty straightforward. You've got tier 3, of course, for all these characters. For Blast Male, you can actually go with Cable. Cable's the only tier 2 on this entire list besides Mystique and Superior Octopus that actually still gets good scores. Cable is, he's a very unique specimen. People use CTPs of Rage on Cable as well. You can use Energy, but I don't think it goes as high as Professor X. And I don't think I've ever seen a Cable hit 7 million, but now we are starting to see Professor X hit 7 million on the top end. So I think ultimately he's a better option. I tried to ballpark the number of Odin's Blessings you want for these characters. It can be more or less depending on how good your cards are. Like, for example, I said that a competitive score for Magneto is about 3.5 million. Now, competitive score is not the absolute maximum. So, for example, I said for Namor 5,500,000. That's a pretty competitive score. There are players that can hit higher than that. There are players that can hit 7 million. But we're not looking at the absolute maximum. We're looking at what a competitive score will get you. This will get you, if you score 41 million and 35 million, I'm pretty sure you can get a spot in almost any alliance in the game if they are looking to replace a player with an ABX focused player. So that's what I mean by competitive. It's not top score. It's not, all father scores. It is just a competitive score for about the top, 500 to 1,000 players. In the case of Magneto, like I said, I can hit about 3.5 million, maybe a couple of reruns, not too many. But as you can see, for my Magneto, I have, 0 Odin's Blessings. But I did ballpark it at about 4 to 6 Odin's Blessings because some players' playstyle is different, or they have a little bit of lag, or their cards are not as good. So this will fluctuate. This amount will fluctuate depending on how good your cards are, how good the rest of your build is. I also do have an insight, and I do list insight for all of the builds, but I don't necessarily have an insight on all of my characters. Another thing that you want to notice for ABX, and you want to take into consideration in general, whether you're just aiming for 600k over here or you are aiming for higher, is that you want to try and double dip or triple dip as much as possible with builds and with CTPs, especially CTPs of Rage and Insight, because swapping them or having to roll for another one is super, super costly. And this is, again, my chance to get on my soapbox and remind Netmarble Monster, give us a second Obelisk equip slot for free, just like you gave us 3 ISO 8 slots. It's that simple. Now, as I go Supernova, what I'm trying to say is, if you scroll over here, you'll see that I tried to double dip as much as possible with characters. So we have Hydro-Man here, but we can also use Hydro-Man for the Blast Mail Day. So it's really important to try and reuse characters so that you save yourself resources. Of course, we use Sharon Rogers in the No Restriction Day, and then we try to use Viper as much as possible as well in both of the Villain Days. We use Shuri where we can for Speed Hero and Speed Female Hero. And then we use Black Widow as much as we can for that as well. You could probably actually swap Black Widow with Sharon Rogers for No Restriction. So you could actually even get it cheaper. I just choose Sharon Rogers because everyone gets Sharon Rogers tier 2 from the Academy, Shield Academy. So, it's just an assumption that you'll have her. Probably the only expensive character here out of all, if you've noticed, is Ant-Man. I'm actually struggling to think of another universal villain that can hit 600k on that day. I don't think there's another one that's cheaper than Ant-Man. There's definitely more expensive characters but I don't think there's a cheaper character that hits 600k. Like maybe like a level 70, 10 Odin's Blessings Morgan Le Fay with a CTP of Rage. Yeah, but that's more expensive than Anti-Man, if you know what I'm saying. So yeah, although Anti-Man is difficult to get, he still does serve a purpose here. But if you have a better suggestion for me in the comments, hit me up. Of course, if you've got like God tier cards and rages and stuff like that, it's probably not a good example to name someone like, I don't know, Pimtron or something like that. But yeah, I tried to double dip as much as possible here to reuse characters to double and triple up on characters so that you don't have to build 14 separate sets. Of course, this doesn't take into consideration leaderships and passives. It goes without saying, if you're playing on the Blast Hero Day, you want to use... Actually, you know what? Hydro-Man is not a good option, I just realized, for the Blast Male Day because of the fact that he is a villain, so he can't take advantage of the buff with Coulson. So you'd probably actually want to... I just spit a lot. You probably actually want to exchange these for heroes. Maybe it's still easier to hit 100k, 300k, and 600k with villains without using Coulson's buff, but that's definitely something that you can experiment with, and I'll look forward to your comments down below. I can't really think of a cheaper, stronger Blast Male. Again, I'm also looking for characters that don't have uniforms that you have to buy. That's why I chose characters like Hydro-Man, like Morgan Le Fay, like Iron Hammer, and War Tiger, because they're just like really good out of the box. You don't even need to invest in a uniform for them. Maybe Human Torch, I'm thinking, would be a decent option, but I haven't seen any Human Torch ABX scores that can go up there, but at least he can take advantage of... He can take advantage of Ancient One as well. So you've got the Ancient One leadership to buff his fire damage and his blast energy damage, and then you've also got Coulson. Maybe, you know what? Maybe Human Torch was the one that I was missing here. But yeah, and then the last thing I want to let you guys know again about double dipping and triple dipping has to do with CTPs of Insight, and I just can't really illustrate this with the characters, but for the most part, well, in total, throughout the list, I put the CTPs of Insight here on the support character. But in some cases, you actually don't want to give the support character, you don't want to designate the support character for the CTP of Insight. But again, it's up to you and how many insights you have. So for example, and I can't really give you a good estimate of how much a CTP of Insight adds or reduces on your score because it varies from character to character. Some characters do more with a CTP of Insight, some characters do less. But for example, Hyperion or Medusa are both good leads for Captain Marvel Universal Hero. Hyperion does give more overall when you have both uniforms, but it's only a 3% attack difference. On the flip side, you can't use Hyperion for any other day, but you do have to use Medusa for the Universal Hero Female Day because there's no better leadership than Medusa. Like, there's a huge drop-off between Medusa and the next best one, which would be Captain Marvel's own leadership or Singularity. So in that case, it actually makes a lot more sense, instead of giving Ghost Panther a CTP of Insight and then giving Singularity a CTP of Insight, although that's what I wrote, just because it's difficult to write it here, you're much better off either giving a CTP of Insight to both Hyperion and Medusa, or giving a CTP of Insight to Medusa and then just not using Hyperion. So again, you do lose out on a little bit. If you're really trying to min-max, you would use Hyperion and you'd use Ghost Panther Insight, and then here you'd give Medusa an Insight or you'd give Singularity an Insight, but that's more expensive. You can save an Insight here and not lose much score if you just give one to Medusa for both days. Same thing goes with Taskmaster and Red Hulk. I think for now it's better to give Red Hulk the CTP of Insight because Taskmaster is apparently bugged and it's not working, it's not stacking. Another option over here for Blast Villain is you use Magneto and Cyclops and either Magic or Emma Frost. Now, whether you have Magic or Emma Frost Villain Phoenix 5 uniforms is really going to dictate who you give the Insight to, because then you want to double dip and use either Magic or Emma Frost again for the female villain stage with Mystique. So I have here, Black Cat plus Emma Frost. You could swap Emma Frost with Magic. It's the same thing as long as one of them has the Insight, but you don't want to give it to Black Cat because actually you might want to give it to... No, you don't want to give it to Black Cat. No, never mind. Because she's only usable on one day. So yeah, using your CTPs of Insight and stuff like that wisely so that you can double and triple use them, double, triple dip on them is important, especially when you're building up your scores and you're trying to push for high scores in general. And then, of course, prioritizing your characters. Luna Snow is probably the best character in the game because she's available for 4 days out of 2 weeks. and then from there you can sort of dictate what you want to do. The last thing I want to mention here is Mystique and Superior Octopus. This is the one unique day of the week where you actually want to alternate. If you want the highest score possible, you actually want to alternate between two characters. So there isn't really a true support character. In this case, Baron Zemo acts as both a leadership and a support because he offers a silence. And then in this case, Mystique and Superior Octopus offer similar damage numbers. So it's actually very expensive because you have to awaken both of them. You have to give them both a CTP of Rage. This is probably Netmarble Monster's wet dream as far as marketing is concerned. But basically, the way that you play is of course, you start with Baron Zemo, you swap to Superior Octopus, Dr. Octopus, you use your Awaken skill, then you swap to Mystique, you use her Awaken skill, you do damage with Mystique, you swap back to Dr. Octopus, you use his Awaken skill, then you swap over to Baron Zemo, you silence the Frost Beast to interrupt his roar, and then you continue again by swapping back to Mystique. So it's actually a very interesting and unique and like skill intensive play style to actually be swapping back and forth between characters. It's kind of reminiscent of the the Weapon Hex Gambit thing that I showed you guys about a week ago. Maybe I'll make a video about that because it's actually quite entertaining to watch and to see, because even one small mistake completely ruins the run. But that's basically how it is for ABX anyways, with like roar canceling and stuff. So there's not much there. I'll try to update this list in the future with more information, like which days you can roar cancel on and which ones you can't, because that will also affect your score massively. But for those more detailed, more minute pieces of information, you're much better off looking up ABX videos from dedicated channels. There are people like Koshal, I believe, Free-to-Play Adventures makes really good ABX videos. Of course, Vader G is like the ABX guru, and there are others out there as well. So yeah, let me know what you guys think of the ABX guide. Hopefully, I will have encouraged some of you to push to, at least 300 to 600K to get some of those extra daily rewards. I think it's absolutely worth it for every player in the game. Beyond that, unfortunately, I cannot really encourage anyone to go for anything above 600K. So Netmarble Monster, please make these rewards worthwhile and make them representative and reflective of the amount of effort you have to put in to go from 600K to 7 million. That's more than 11 times the score, guys. Is this really 11 times the reward? The answer is hell no. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know what you think down below in the comments, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.